let's get right to it here. We have an amazing guest with us today who's going to be joining us. You know him. He began his career with the film The Day Trippers. If I recall correctly, that movie was at Sundance. I don't know. Greg is going to tell me. He's going to correct me. That movie was at Sundance. Also, he made one of your favorite comedies, Superbad. He made Superbad. And he also has a new film out. It is in theaters. It's also on, you can get it on video on demand on iTunes, I believe, and Vudu. And Greg Mottola is joining us here on the show. Greg, thank you so much for joining us on the Film Threat livecast here.
I should say it's in theaters as well.
Yes, that's right. It's in theaters.
My pleasure, Chris. It's great to be here.
Yeah, cool. So tell us about, first of all, thank you for all your work in the past.
You're welcome.
Superbad is that, before we talk about Confess Fletch, which Alan and I both loved, enjoyed, really fun comedy. John Hamm just nails it. Such a likable character in it. Superbad is one of my favorites. Do you think you could make Superbad today?
I have been asked that before. I think once by my children. I don't know. I mean, there was a minute where I felt like people are trying to cancel that movie a couple of years ago, where they're like, yeah, these kids their plan is terrible. It's, to me, one of the reasons I loved it, because I saw a table read while I was doing a Judd Apatow show, Undeclared. There was a table read with Seth Rogen and Jason Segel reading the two lead parts. And that was a good 3 years before Superbad got made. And I thought, this is so authentic. This is so the way kids actually talk. And to me, I always thought they're navigating, horrible male behavior. They're trying to figure out, how to deal with their insane hormonal thoughts and be good people. The thing that cracked it completely is when Jonah came in and played that guy as, like, saying the most horrible things imaginable, but clearly with a look of terror on his face. Like, he obviously knew nothing about sex and women or any of it. He's not a bad guy. So, I could see people going after it for content, but I feel like they'd really be missing the point. I'd like to think they'd still make it.
Yeah, I think what they'll do is they'll probably do the female version of Superbad. And that could be kind of book smart, was a little bit like that, felt that way.
Sure.
So, now tell us about Confess Fletch. You're bringing back the Fletch character. John Hamm, just, in my opinion, I think you picked the right guy. I think he's channeling a little bit of Chevy Chase's performance, somewhat, a little bit of that, adding a completely fresh spin on it. And he just knocks it out of the park. How did this whole project come together?
Well, it's luckily John's the one who came to me. We'd worked together. We're friends. He said, would you ever do a Fletch movie? Miramax approached me. They own the rights to all the books but the first one. And what they didn't know is that John, when he saw the first Fletch movie, saw in the credits, it's based on a novel. He's like, I want to read that novel. I love this. So he read the novel, then found out there were other novels. Oh, it's a series. So then he went and stole them from a Walden Books. He was a teenage larcenist. It was like a fantasy in the back of his head. Oh, wouldn't it be amazing to play this character? Obviously, other people have tried to get these made, and for whatever reason, they haven't happened, which is a shame. I would love to have seen all those versions. And so John came to me and said, would you do it? I knew of the books. I heard they were great. I'd never gotten to them. I love detective stories, so that's my bad. So I went off and read them all, and they're fantastic. And the one that John wanted to do was Confess Fletch. And, we spent some time saying, are we going to get crucified? Because, there's certain characters, fictional characters like Dashiell Hammett or Raymond Chandler's Philip Marlowe was played by Humphrey Bogart and Elliot Gould. He's been played by 15 actors. Fletch has only been played by one actor, and it's a very indelible performance. And I love it. John loves it. And John's like, I can't imitate him. We'll pay homage and we'll have some of the spirit of it. And we thought, yeah, we're crazy enough to do that. So So we did.
Well, he really nails it, and he's just so. I mean, I just like John Hamm just as a. I think that he's awesome. What was it like? Like you're friends with him. What's he like to work with? It seems like it was fun to make this movie. And in addition, I have to compliment you. All the side characters are amazing. I mean, Kyle MacLachlan's character and all their idiosyncrasies are hysterical. So I think that those just really made the whole thing, especially the police captain.
Oh yeah, Roy Wood Jr. He's fantastic.
He's great. He's great. You're getting a lot of love in the chat here. Would you mind taking some questions and some comments from people in the chat? Someone's asking when it's out. It's out now. It's in theaters. Confess Fletch is in theaters.
Yeah, it's not the most marketed film in the world. We live in a brave new world of, is it straight to streaming mostly? I don't know. But yes, it is in theaters briefly.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot on the show. It's like in the movies that it's like like the movie 13 Lives by Ron Howard. Why was that not in the theater? Why was that only? And then there's some movies I see at the theater. I'm like, this should have maybe been on streaming. Yeah, but people are saying X douchey McDouche X. I love our username here. Super excited to see this. Fletch is so great. Blah blah says Chevy Chase just made Fletch in so many ways. I have a hard time imagining anyone else playing it. John,
I get that.
Yeah,
yeah.
But
I feel like he made it his own. I mean, that felt. I imagine that's what John Hamm is really like.
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, if you read the books, he's not quite the way Chevy played it. Chevy brought his comic persona to it. And one thing I love about Chevy's version is he plays it like he walks into a room and confuses people so much that he gets them to tell him what he wants or do what he wants because they just don't know what the hell's going on. It's almost like the Marx Brothers. It's just that confusing. And he's so funny at that. But that's not really the character in the books. And in the books, the secondary characters are quite funny. In the Fletch movie, it's really like everyone else is straight man to Chevy, which works beautifully. But in this version, John sometimes is a straight man to them, and they're sometimes straight. You know, it moves around more. It's closer to the books.
Latino Slant says, can't wait to see this movie now. Otio says Fletch was fantastic, and John Hamm nails it. Funny and interesting the whole way through. Portland 182 says, how did you get the amazing cast for Adventureland?
I knew Bill Hader, obviously. He knew Kristen Wiig, so I begged them. I went to Ryan Reynolds and begged him, and he wasn't sure he wanted to do it, but I showed him a couple of movies that inspired the script, and he was like, okay, I'm in. And I was a fan of Jesse Eisenberg's and Kristen Stewart. The funny thing is we did Adventureland before the first Twilight, but we came out after the first Twilight. I just remember like the director of Twilight came to our set in Pittsburgh to audition, like to give Kristen her last audition. And one morning she came in and said, yeah, I got that vampire movie. Like no big deal. Like that's not going to launch you into superstardom or anything like that. But I'm good at begging.
Thank you for Superbad, says JTPRX. Andrew Eterno says, I was in high school at the time and it was pretty accurate. Talking about Superbad. John Hamm seems like a solid dude, says Patrick Lemire.
He is.
And then Ferd to the Future says, Greg, please tell us the truth about how Michael Cera is on set. Videos of him freaking out and rumors show that he is an a-hole. Is that true?
I don't know if I want to ruin this, but no, it's not true. Just this little shit we did to amuse ourselves. And then they had him, you know, in Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg's movie. What was it called? Brain fart. The one about the end of the world. Michael Cera played himself as a total coke fueled maniac. No, I just worked with Michael on a little side project a couple of weeks ago. He is the nicest human being alive. I hate to ruin it.
This is the end. That was it.
This is the end. Yeah.
This is the end. Yeah. Which was hilarious.
The Holy Moment says Superbad is still the hardest I have ever laughed at a movie. Ryan Landis says today's version would have to be kind of bad to pass. Pete Dencat says Superbad is so good. Love that film. You're just getting a lot of love here. Solomon Thornton.
It's nice.
Hello, Sir Greg. Love Superbad, one of my favorite comedies.
Can I ask you, like, just the adaptation process? You have a novel, but you have to condense it to 90 minutes, and you do modernize it to today. Is that kind of a monumental task, or what is the secret behind that?
Well, I mean, the good thing about Gregory MacDonald's Fletch novels is they're so dialogue driven. I mean, they really move. Yeah, there's a lot of things I couldn't use. There's like a character that people who've read this book really love called Flynn, who's an Irish detective who lives in Boston, who's spun off to 3 other books. We did not have the rights to that character, so I created Roy Wood's character, Slow-Mo Malone, and yeah, it's I was so into it. It seemed daunting at first, but then when I started doing it, I was just enjoying it. Another writer took a first pass. I felt he didn't use enough of the book, and it was a little too much like a Chevy version. He was like putting in having the fake names, famous people, and some of the stuff that I feel like that's Chevy's. He did that. That was his joke. I don't feel right stealing it. So I went back to the book and grabbed characters and said, well, what's the equivalent in 2020 for this kind of person? And like, let's make fun of influencers, stuff like that.
CD Stein 69 says, John is an underrated comedic actor. And as a fellow St. Louis guy, love to see he's repping us as well. Any chance on you and him continuing this series?
Well, this release is very tiny. They did not spend a lot of money by design. They it's hard for medium small movies. They decided like, we'll dip it in the theaters, but it's really a on demand and then to Showtime release. So I don't know how when you get behind the curtains of streaming, who knows what the money is? Will they think it's worth making another? All I know is Miramax has been insanely supportive, and they've hired me to write a sequel. So there's another book called Fletch's Fortune that I've started adapting.
That's good. Okay. It feels like it could be a series to me, a new series with John Hamm.
The books are great. There's so much to mine there.
Wow. Luke Skywanker says, can you ask Greg if he's a Godfather 1 or Godfather 2 guy?
I'm a Godfather 2 guy. I love the first is brilliant, but I love the De Niro parts. I love the Cuba part. There's so much. It's just, yeah. I mean, it's a hard choice, but I at the end of the day, I go 2.
Let's see. I'm going to go through some of these. You got more questions than we're going to have time to get to. But Latino Slant says, Greg, have you seen Plan B? Lots of folks call it the female Superbad. Well, I did in my review. Huge fan of yours.
I've heard of it, but I have not seen it. I heard it's great.
Cool. And let's see. Tom Siebert says, saw Confess Fletch and thought it was better than either of the Chevy Chase movies, closer to the books. John Hamm expertly cast, laughed so hard at that kitchen scene in the 3rd act.
Tom, I think Tom might be my publicist. Fake name. No, I love you, Tom. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
JTP RX says, do you poke any fun at any woke issues of today?
Well, I think I poke fun at like the influencer character. Those kind of people, I think, are often on the right side or have the same, let's say, they have the same politics I do, which are, I will fully admit, on the Democratic side. Okay. But they also are so tone deaf about like everything they do is about money, selling to people with money, making yourself beautiful if you have a ton of money. And that's a side of, a kind of limousine liberal that I think deserves a kick in the shins.
There you go. And then Solomon Thornton asks, any other classic comedy films you'd want to try?
I don't know. It's pretty scary trying to take on a movie that everyone loves. I do love detective movies. So that was part of the excitement of this. I would, if someone wanted to bring back the Thin Man movies or something, I could be into it. And, if Lucasfilm, they have my number. If they ever want me for anything, I'll be there.
Lubitsch touched me as what's been your favorite project you've worked on?
I've been really lucky. I mean, we had way too much fun on Superbad. It should have turned out really terribly because I often hear like, if you're having fun on the movie, it's not going to be good. But we were just like in a groove, and the studio was just supportive and leaving us alone. And, you know, we just had Judd to block any any bad notes. I'd say that was probably the most fun I've ever had on a movie set. But, you know, I did this crazy movie with Larry David, Clear History, which was all improv. And to do a movie that's all improv is nuts. But that was amazing. But Superbad was special.
Glanuccio asks, how much ad-libbing do you allow?
It kind of depends. I mean, I think on Superbad, obviously, there's great stuff in there that the actors came up with in the moment. It's probably a little less ad-libbing than some of Judd's other movies, but, you know, it was definitely something we made time for. On this movie, you know, we had 40 days to shoot Superbad. We only have 30 days to shoot Fletch. So I, you know, just couldn't do as much as I might have. But when you have someone like Annie Mumolo playing the crazy neighbor, yeah, you let her loose. You let her off the leash and go a little nuts.
Vamp King says, would you work with Jonah Hill again?
If he'd return my calls. No, I'm kidding. Yes, absolutely. Jonah's a genius.
That's great. And then let's see, you have so many questions here. Dempsey, if you had the choice, which IP would be your dream project? Would it be established IP or one of your own creation?
Well, you know, I try to do one little personal indie film every decade, and I wrote one, and that's the thing I would most like to make next. It's just, you know, like an A24 sized movie. That would be really fun while I'm trying to figure out the next Fletch book. As far as like existing IP, that's too hard to answer. Like I said, the Lucasfilm people have my number.
Tony Bowers for 5 says, hearing the history of how this came together turned me around. Loved Chevy's super flippant Fletch and assumed this reboot would be terrible. Sold. It's great. It's great. We were talking about it when we started our stream a couple hours ago, how Confess Fletch just really surprised us. And I just love John Hamm. He's like in a series of commercials where he's very funny. He plays himself.
Yeah.
For Apple.
The flow, the progressive, yeah.
Yeah, he's got a very dry sense of humor. He likes the absurd. You know, it's like I think there's a lot of people that wish, you know, when they heard it conceptually, thought it should be someone who's more in the style of Chevy as an actor, as a comic. But I think it's good to be slightly different, because no one could ever do it as well as Chevy did his version. So it's got to be a new version. Yeah, John's a funny guy, and he's obviously very charming. But it was also fun to make him look foolish. I made sure to have him fall on his face and be wrong about stuff, because who wants to watch John Hamm be right for 90 minutes? I mean, come on.
And then after this movie, one of the benefits of it is John Hamm will finally be on OnlyFeet. So that's going to be, I'm pretty sure that's going to, there's a whole thread where he likes to have his shoes off. It's funny.
Yeah, that's in the books. I took that from it's a weird thing in the books. I thought, okay, let's put it in the movie. I don't really understand it, but I think it's funny.
He made it work so well. A question from earlier, A. Chernabog for $4.99 says, if not more than young Chevy won't be around for Mr. Mottola, please ask for me. Are you glad Kevin Smith never made his version? Also, no Ted Underhill.
I have answers for both of those. I would love to have seen Kevin Smith's version. The Kevin Smith's version was a prequel, so it was young Fletch, and yeah, you know, one of these days I'll get my hands on the script. I want to read it. The only reason we had a Ted Underhill joke in the first 5 minutes of the movie, but then found out from legal that the character's name, we could only use characters that were mentioned in all the novels, but the first one. But Mr. Underhill is named in this book called Karaoke Fletch, which is a direct sequel to the first Fletch book, but his name was Mr. Underwood. And that would be just weird to do an Underwood reference.
Jeff asks, I'm completely open to John Hamm's interpretation of the character, and I know it was in good hands with you. What was the biggest challenge in making this film?
Besides panic attacks about doing it, you know, we had to do it fast and cheap to some extent. Not as low budget as something like Adventureland, but it was 30 days seemed really short for what we were trying to do. At the same time, that's the way the business has gone. I've gotten some good practice working super fast. When I did the pilot for the TV show Dave, they gave us 5 days. You used to get 10, 15 days for a pilot. It's just crazy. Things have changed. Yeah, that was a challenge. But the reason we could do it is because the studio let us do our thing and didn't mess with us.
CD Stein 69 asks, we need a Superbad sequel where all those kids are parents. Would you ever return to that series?
I feel like Judd is the only one who once every 5 years brings up the idea, and Seth and Evan Goldberg say no.
Oh, really?
they just
leave it as it is.
They want to leave it as it is. It's it's an interesting thing. There are movies that have sequels that no one even thinks about. Who thinks about Jaws 2? Who thinks about More American Graffiti? That exists. There's a sequel to American Graffiti. I don't, no one watches it. So I mean, yeah, if it stunk, it could go away, but you don't want to. Yeah.
I know we have to wrap up soon. Can you stick around for a couple more questions?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Great. Peter Puffer says, I love Keeping Up with the Joneses. I miss Zach Galifianakis in live action. Does Greg know if Zach is retired from live action?
Zach is, he loves stand-up. I think he likes living on his farm, which is on an island somewhere near Vancouver. And I've been trying to drag him into things. I don't think he's retired. I just think he loves to sneak on stage and stand-up appearances that no one knows is going to happen. I hope he's not retired. It was an incredible pleasure working with Zach. He's great.
8-Bit Sync Boy says, thanks for Paul. That movie just doesn't get enough love these days. So funny and such a great guest cast, especially Sigourney and Jason Bateman. Looks like it was a lot of fun to make too. Any thoughts on Paul?
Yeah, it was a tremendous fun to make. It was a little challenging because it was like doing an ensemble comedy where one of the main characters is a $15 million special effect, taking up a third of your budget. And so it's like another thing of like, yeah, we got to do this pretty fast and stop for silver ball, special effects plates and shit. But yes, I mean, Simon Pegg, Nick Frost are the greatest. Everyone's great. Sigourney, I can't believe Sigourney was willing to do it. I've stayed in touch with her. I see her every once in a while. She's amazing. And and we all love Jason, he himself is a fantastic director.
Dempsey asks, if you had to remake any really bad movie, which one would you choose to do?
Oh, that's a challenging question. I'm going to take a pass and see if I think of something, but it's a good question.
What's been your favorite project you've worked on, says Lubitsch Touch Me?
It's hard to pick favorites, but the combination of getting to do something I really fully believed in and felt like I was supported, and then to have people actually go and see it has to be Superbad. I mean, that's like a once in a lifetime experience.
And following up on that, Vamp King says, in Superbad, did you base the main characters off of any people you knew?
Well, Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg did. They started writing the script when they were teenagers. The only thing that survived from I think they were 15 or even younger when they started writing it. The only thing that survived that version was the name McLovin, because only someone who's like a 15-year-old could come up with a name that stupid. And it's like, yes, that I'm glad they did not dispense with that part of their original script when they threw the rest away. They based it on their friends.
Any more thoughts on the really bad movie you'd like to remake?
Oh, man.
Or maybe even a franchise. You mentioned earlier Lucasfilm. If you were going to play in the Star Wars universe, anything, not that that's bad, but just like, is there something like you haven't you're mostly known for comedies, but like.
I would love the chance to write and or direct something for them that leans a little more toward the kind of character based swashbuckling aspects of the original trilogy. Famously George Lucas was very inspired by a Kurosawa film called Hidden Fortress, which had great characters who became C-3PO and R2-D2. Something that was just a little more, a little more comedy. It would have to be dramatic too, but like real character based thing, whether that's a show. I'm talking out of my ass. This is never going to happen, but that would be an amazing fantasy.
Cool. Well, Greg, I want to thank you for spending time with us on the Film Threat Livecast. I want to thank our chat for all their great questions. Congrats on
thanks,
Confess. Thank you for Confess, Fletch. It's so entertaining, in theaters and available on demand as well. See it either way. But
I don't care how you see it.
Yeah. And just thank you also for your past work. I mean, I've followed you for years, and just at Film Threat, we have an appreciation of the indie. I mean, even when you do like a bigger movie, it has an indie feel.
I can't escape it. I can't seem to escape it. Yeah, because I like character stuff. I love actors. I love character-based stuff. I tend not to get huge budgets, so.
Well, I mean, you bring the right flair to it, and Confess, Fletch is a blast. People are just thanking you in the chat. Take care. I hope we get to talk to you again. And I appreciate your time. Thanks again.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. Take care.
All right. Take care, Greg.
Bye.
Later.
Thank you.
What a great guy. That guy's dude. And I'd forgotten that he did Paul. I'm so glad he did Paul. I was like, oh yeah, Paul. People in the chat up on it. I love it. I want to thank everybody there.